What happens when one of Hollywood's most respected actors sits down for what should be a friendly morning chat, only to find himself blindsided by a host who seems more interested in stirring up drama than having a real conversation? In just 34 seconds, a simple question about family would spiral into one of the most shocking moments in morning television history, exposing a side of Lara Spencer that left audiences stunned, and Denzel Washington walking off the set. The morning started like any other on Good Morning America. The lights were bright, the cameras were rolling, and the audience was settled in their seats, eager to hear from Denzel Washington. He had just finished filming a new movie, and everyone wanted to know about his process, his inspiration, and what it was like working with such an incredible cast. Denzel walked onto the set with his usual calm presence, that quiet confidence that had made him one of the most beloved figures in entertainment. He shook hands with Lara Spencer, smiled at the audience, and sat down in the guest chair. Lara started with the basics. She asked him about the film, about his character, about what drew him to the role. Denzel answered each question thoughtfully, giving the audience real insight into his craft. He talked about the long days on set, the emotional weight of certain scenes, and how he prepared himself mentally for such a demanding role. The conversation flowed easily at first. Lara seemed engaged, nodding along, throwing in follow-up questions that seemed genuine. But then something shifted. Lara leaned forward in her chair, and there was a change in her expression. Something sharper. Something that felt less like curiosity and more like calculation. She smiled, but it was the kind of smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "So Denzel," she said, her voice taking on a different tone, "I want to talk about something a little more personal. You've been married for a long time. Decades, actually. That's pretty rare in Hollywood, isn't it?" Denzel nodded, still calm. "It is. I'm very blessed. My wife is an incredible woman, and we've built a beautiful life together." Lara tilted her head. Right. But come on, let's be honest here. How much of that is real, and how much of that is just good PR? I mean, you're a movie star. You're on location for months at a time. There have been rumors over the years. Whispers. You know what I'm talking about." The audience went quiet. You could feel the tension immediately. Denzel's smile faded, and he sat up a little straighter. "I'm not sure what you're asking me, Lara." "I think you do," she said, and now there was no mistaking the edge in her voice. "I'm asking if your marriage is as perfect as you make it sound, or if that's just the image you want people to believe." Denzel took a breath. He kept his composure, but you could see it in his eyes. He was taken aback. "My marriage is my marriage. It's not an image. It's my life. It's real. And I don't appreciate the insinuation that I'm being dishonest about something so important to me." Lara laughed, but it wasn't a warm laugh. It was dismissive. "Oh, come on. Don't be so sensitive. I'm just asking the questions everyone's thinking. People want to know the truth, not the polished version." "The truth is what I just told you," Denzel said, his voice firm but controlled. "I love my wife. I'm committed to my family. That's the truth. That's not polish. That's my life." But Lara wasn't backing down. If anything, she seemed emboldened by his reaction. She leaned back in her chair, crossing her legs, looking almost amused. "You know, Denzel, I think the problem with actors like you is that you spend so much time playing characters, you forget how to be real. You give these rehearsed answers, you stay on message, and you never let anyone see what's actually going on behind the scenes." Denzel stared at her for a moment, and you could see him processing what was happening. This wasn't a conversation anymore. This was an ambush. "Lara, I came here to talk about my work. I came here to talk about a film that I'm proud of, that a lot of people worked very hard on. I didn't come here to have my personal life dissected and my integrity questioned." "Well, maybe that's the problem," Lara shot back. "Maybe you only want to talk about what's convenient for you. But that's not how interviews work. I get to ask the questions, and you get to answer them. That's the deal." The audience was dead silent now. Some people looked uncomfortable, others looked shocked. This was not what anyone had expected from a morning talk show. Denzel shook his head slowly. "No, Lara, that's not the deal. The deal is respect. The deal is that you treat your guests with basic human decency. And right now, you're not doing that." Lara's expression hardened. "Excuse me? Are you seriously going to lecture me about how to do my job? I've been doing this for years. I know how to conduct an interview." "Then maybe you should start acting like it," Denzel said, and his voice was quiet, but there was steel in it. "Because what you're doing right now isn't journalism. It's not even entertainment. It's just mean." Lara's face flushed. You could see the anger rising. You don't get to come on my show and talk to me like that. I am the host here. This is my set. And if you can't handle a few tough questions, then maybe you shouldn't be doing interviews at all. Tough questions? Denzel repeated, and there was disbelief in his voice. You didn't ask me a tough question. You made an accusation. You implied that I'm a liar and that my marriage is fake. That's not journalism, Lara. That's just cruel. The tension was unbearable now. The crew behind the cameras didn't know what to do. The producers were probably scrambling in the control room, and the audience just sat there, watching this unfold in real time. Lara stood up from her chair, and her voice rose. You know what? I don't have to sit here and be criticized by someone who thinks they're too good to answer a simple question. You actors are all the same. You want all the fame and the money and the adoration, but the second someone asks you something real, you run away. Denzel stood up too, and he looked at her with an expression that was equal parts disappointment and resolve. I'm not running away from anything, Lara. I'm walking away from disrespect. There's a difference. Oh, please, Lara said, throwing her hands up. You're just mad because I didn't treat you like royalty. Newsflash, Denzel? You're not special. You're just another actor with an ego. And that was the moment. That was the line that couldn't be uncrossed. Denzel looked at her for a long moment, and then he reached up and unclipped his microphone. Slowly, deliberately, he set it down on the chair. I've been in this industry for over 40 years, he said quietly. I've done thousands of interviews. I've been asked hard questions, personal questions, uncomfortable questions, and I've always answered them with honesty and respect, but I have never, in all that time, been treated the way you just treated me. Lara crossed her arms. So what are you going to do? Walk off? Go ahead, prove my point. I'm not proving anything, Denzel said, except that I know my worth, and I know when it's time to leave. He turned to the audience, and his expression softened. I'm sorry you all had to witness this. You came here for something positive, and you deserve better than what just happened. I hope you have a good rest of your day. And then he walked off the set, just like that. No dramatics, no yelling, no storming off in a rage. He simply removed himself from a situation that had become toxic. The audience didn't know how to react. Some people started clapping, hesitant at first, but then it grew louder. Others just sat there in shock. And Lara stood in the middle of the set, looking furious and flustered, clearly not expecting him to actually leave. Well, she said, trying to regain control, her voice shaky, I guess Denzel Washington can't handle the heat. We'll be right back after this break. But the damage was done. The cameras had captured everything. The audience had seen everything. And within minutes, people who were there started talking about it, texting their friends, posting on social media. By the time the show went to commercial, the moment was already going viral. Because what people saw wasn't a diva actor throwing a tantrum. What they saw was a dignified man being pushed too far by a host who seemed to forget that her job was to make guests feel welcome, not to tear them down for ratings. Let's rewind and look at how this all fell apart so quickly. When Denzel first sat down, everything seemed fine. Lara asked about the movie. She asked about his co-stars. She asked about his process. These were the kinds of questions that any actor expects and is happy to answer. Denzel was relaxed, open, even charming. He told stories about being on set, about funny moments with the crew, about the director's vision. The audience was engaged. People were smiling. It was exactly what a morning show interview should be. But then Lara pivoted. And it wasn't a smooth pivot. It was abrupt. It felt calculated. She went from asking about his work to questioning his personal life in a way that felt aggressive. When she brought up his marriage and immediately followed it with accusations about rumors and whispers, that was the first red flag. Because that's not a question. That's an attack disguised as a question. Denzel tried to deflect it gracefully. He talked about his wife, about his gratitude, about his commitment. He gave her an answer. But Lara didn't accept it. She pushed harder. She laughed at him. She dismissed his response as if it was rehearsed and fake. And that's when the dynamic completely changed. What's important to understand here is that Denzel didn't get defensive because he had something to hide. He got defensive because he was being disrespected. There's a difference between asking a tough question and making someone feel attacked. A tough question would be something like, marriage is hard, especially in your industry. What's your secret to making it work? That's direct, but it's respectful. It invites a real answer. What Lara did was say, your marriage is probably fake, right? That's not a question. That's an accusation. And when Denzel pushed back, When he said he didn't appreciate the insinuation, Lara didn't apologize. She didn't backtrack. She doubled down. She told him not to be so sensitive. She said everyone was thinking it. She made it seem like his reaction was the problem, not her question. This is a classic deflection tactic. When someone calls you out for being inappropriate, you flip it around and make them seem like they're overreacting. You make them the bad guy for having boundaries. And that's exactly what Lara did. Then came the comment about actors being rehearsed and not knowing how to be real. That was personal. That was a direct attack on his character, on his authenticity. She essentially called him fake to his face on live television. And when he responded by saying he came to talk about his work, not to have his integrity questioned, she shot back that he only wanted to talk about what was convenient for him. But here's the thing. Guests agree to interviews with certain expectations. They're told what topics will be covered. They're given a general idea of what to expect. And while yes, interviewers can go off script, there's still an understanding that the conversation will remain within the bounds of respect. Lara violated that. She went from talking about his career to attacking his personal life and his character without any warning, without any justification. And when Denzel called her out for it, when he said what she was doing wasn't journalism, it was just mean, Lara lost it. She stood up. She raised her voice. She told him he didn't get to lecture her. She told him this was her set, her show, her rules. She pulled rank. She made it about power and control instead of about having a meaningful conversation. That moment, when she said, "I am the host here. This is my set," that was the moment she revealed what this was really about. It wasn't about getting to the truth. It wasn't about asking hard questions. It was about ego. It was about asserting dominance. It was about proving that she was in charge and that guests needed to play by her rules or face the consequences. But Denzel didn't play along. He didn't yell. He didn't match her energy. He stayed calm. He stayed composed. And he made a choice. He chose his dignity over staying in a hostile environment. When he unclipped his microphone, that was the most powerful moment of the entire exchange. Because it wasn't impulsive. It wasn't emotional. It was a conscious decision. He was saying, without words, that he valued himself too much to continue being treated poorly. And Lara's response? She mocked him for it. She told him to go ahead and leave. She said it would prove her point. But what point was she even trying to make? That Denzel couldn't handle tough interviews? That he was entitled? That he had an ego? Because if that was her point, she failed spectacularly. What the audience saw was the exact opposite. They saw a man being calm and respectful while being provoked. They saw a man trying to set boundaries and being ridiculed for it. They saw a man who chose to walk away rather than engage in a fight. And they saw a host who seemed more interested in creating conflict than having a conversation. When Denzel addressed the audience before he left, that was class. He apologized to them. He acknowledged that they deserved better. He didn't trash Lara. He didn't make a scene. He just left. And the audience's reaction said everything. They clapped. They supported him because they recognized what had just happened. They saw someone being mistreated, and they saw that person handle it with grace. After Denzel left, Lara tried to regain control. She made a comment about him not being able to handle the heat. She tried to spin it as if he was the problem. But her voice was shaking. Her composure was gone, and the audience wasn't buying it because everyone knew what they had just witnessed. This wasn't a case of a celebrity being too sensitive. This was a case of a host overstepping, pushing too hard, and losing a guest because of it. The conversation that should have been about Denzel's work, about his passion for storytelling, about the movie he was promoting, became about something else entirely. It became about power dynamics. It became about respect. It became about what happens when someone forgets that the people sitting across from them are human beings, not just content to be mined for ratings. Denzel had every right to walk off that set. He had every right to say no to a situation that had become uncomfortable and hostile. And the fact that he did it calmly, without theatrics, without anger, made it even more powerful. Because sometimes the strongest thing you can do is walk away. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is refuse to participate in your own disrespect. And that's exactly what Denzel did. Lara had a choice too. At any point, she could have pulled back. She could have apologized. She could have acknowledged that she crossed a line. But she didn't. She kept pushing. She kept escalating. And she lost a guest because of it. This wasn't about Denzel being difficult. This wasn't about him having an ego or being unable to handle criticism. This was about a host who forgot that her job is to make guests feel comfortable enough to open up, not to attack them until they shut down. The whole exchange lasted less than 10 minutes, but it felt like an eternity. Every word mattered. Every pause mattered. Every facial expression mattered. And by the end of it, there was no ambiguity about what had happened. Denzel Washington, one of the most respected actors in the world, had been pushed to his limit by a host who seemed more interested in creating drama than having a genuine conversation, and he made the choice that felt right to him. He left. The audience watched him walk off the set with their jaws on the floor. Some of them were angry at Lara. Some of them were confused about how things had escalated so quickly. But almost all of them respected Denzel's decision, because at the end of the day, everyone has a breaking point. Everyone has a moment where they say, "Enough is enough." And Denzel reached his. What should have been a routine interview became one of the most talked about moments in morning television. Not because of anything scandalous, not because of any shocking revelation, but because people watched a man stand up for himself in real time. They watched him try to be polite. They watched him try to redirect the conversation. They watched him try to set boundaries. And they watched those attempts be ignored and dismissed. And then they watched him do the only thing left to do: leave. Lara Spencer had the opportunity to conduct a great interview with one of Hollywood's legends. She had the opportunity to ask meaningful questions, to get real insights, to give her audience something valuable. But instead, she chose confrontation. She chose antagonism. She chose to make it about herself and her need to be provocative. And in doing so, she lost not just the interview, but the respect of everyone watching. Because people can see through that kind of behavior. They can tell when someone is being genuine and when someone is just trying to stir up trouble for the sake of ratings. They can tell the difference between a tough question and a cheap shot. And they can definitely tell when someone is being disrespected. Denzel Washington walked off that set with his dignity intact. He didn't need to raise his voice. He didn't need to insult anyone. He simply refused to continue being treated poorly. And that decision resonated with people. Because we've all been in situations where we felt disrespected. We've all had moments where someone pushed us too far. And most of us wish we had the courage to do what Denzel did. To stand up, to speak our truth, and to walk away when necessary. That 34-second exchange where Lara questioned his marriage wasn't just a question. It was the catalyst for everything that followed. It set the tone, it showed her intentions, and it gave Denzel a glimpse of where this interview was headed. He tried to course correct. He tried to keep things professional, but Lara was determined to push forward with her agenda. And ultimately, that agenda cost her the interview. This moment will be remembered not because of what Lara said, but because of how Denzel responded, with grace, with strength, with self-respect. He showed everyone watching that you don't have to accept mistreatment just because someone has a microphone and a camera. You have the right to protect your peace. You have the right to set boundaries. And you have the right to leave when those boundaries aren't respected. The cameras captured everything. The audience saw everything. And now the world knows what happened when a host forgot that respect is a two-way street. When she forgot that guests are people, not punching bags. When she forgot that her platform comes with responsibility. Denzel Washington reminded everyone of something important that morning. That dignity is not negotiable. That respect is earned, not demanded. And that sometimes, the most powerful statement you can make is to simply walk away.